Now, this is a shot across the bow of the patriarchy, an effective takedown just by switching the well-known roles. What did you observe about the non-empathetic and fake power of the patriarchy that really needed to be taken down a peg?
What did I observe? I mean, obviously, the first beginnings of the true experience of no empathy is when I become a mom. And
Interesting.
and so as I'm rising in my sort of, I'm going to have this unlimited career, I'm amazing, I'm brilliant, everybody's like, oh, you're so smart. I remember I was very young, and I remember walking into the first class I ever taught at Columbia, and I have my hair up in a ponytail, probably looked 18, and the guy in the class says, sit down, the professor is not here yet. And so I sit down, and then when the clock struck 2 o'clock, I got up and went up to the podium. Said, hi, I'm
Excellent.
Professor Anna Fishbeyn. But as I become a mother and as I experience the complete lack of empathy, just for me in that state, for me being pregnant, I remember some guy in the streets of New York, like grabbing a taxi out of me as I'm like 8 months pregnant.
Wow.
And I remember saying, I'm pregnant, dude. And he goes, you're faking it. Is this like, so like experiences like that, I remember thinking, we're raising the next generation. I like to say, we women give birth to the whole world. And so you wouldn't have a world without our vaginas. So you kind of got to respect us. And so I also experience in the playgrounds, where I get to the playground and I say, I'm a mom, I'm a stay-at-home mom, but I also have these artistic aspirations. And the dads were all like, I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor, I'm an accountant, I'm an artist, I'm a this, I'm a that. And I was like, wow. And they get to say that.
Right.
And I remember thinking, God forbid I get to that playground and I don't use the word mother in the first line of an explanation of who I am, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was a super devoted mom. I mean, and every mom has to say this. Like, I even now during this interview, like, you can see me, I'm justifying the fact that I have a career. And I'm saying to you, I love my kids. You know what I'm saying? Like, but I have to say that because that's the culture we're in. I can't have these two independent beings within me. This thirst for ambition, this thirst for creation, and also a mom. And I have them both in me. And so I said, you know what? I'm just gonna like take guys and make them into like dads and perfect boyfriends and want to be, groomsmen, want to be a married guy, just like wanting all of everything, waiting for that engagement. In my movie, they wait for the engagement bracelet, which basically locks them under a lock and key. But if I did that, I said, that would be a fun way to get the men to experience what it's like to be us.
This wild kaleidoscope that was the production design of the film was a combination of animation, AI design, and live action. How did you and your team approach that design, and what was the breakthrough that made it work so effectively?
The story is that originally I shot it on a cyclorama.
Okay.
It had nothing. It had no special effects. And originally I thought, I'm a genius. I came up with the most ingenious idea of the century. I'm going to reverse gender and everyone will get it. You know what I'm saying? That was and the first time I watched the movie with an audience and no one is laughing at my jokes, that was the first, I want to say, like, spike in the heart, knife in the gut. Like, what? No one's laughing? Why aren't they laughing? And, the most obvious conclusion that any other person would make would be like, Anna, go back to the drawing board, redo the jokes. But no, I was like, no, wait a second. What if I play with color? What if I play with environments? What if they just don't believe that they're in the future? And that's how I begin to play with removing the back. So remove the back, I put in another background, and suddenly they're floating on a pink cloud. And I'm like, whoa, this is incredible. And so actually get the film I do everything by hand. I spent 2 years from 2020 till 2022, basically painstakingly removing every coloration, every, masking out the backdrop, creating these splicing. And then I didn't want anything unoriginal. So I would get videos from Pod 5 or from Shutterstock or whatever. And then I would take like 7 videos, splice them together into an original backdrop, recreate. So you can never, you can't go into Pond 5 and say, oh, I know where she got that from, because you won't, because I created that. So then get these awesome environments in, then create planets around it, because no normal human experience is going to be that weird. And then and then, and then screen it in Cannes 2022, and then finally in Toronto of September 2022, and people are bursting into laughter.
Oh, there you go.
That's when I know I finally, and then I say to myself, the road has begun. And then I learn AI in 2023, and the movie is still, like marinating stage. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to introduce some AI robots into this.
Sure.
And when I do, it's as if the story, like, I can't even begin to tell you what it's like once the robots come in. Now you really feel like you're in the future, but you're also connecting with our current AI environment.
Right.
You're also like, oh, I can see how that's going to get to this point.
Interesting. So you had women supporting roles. What feedback did they give you about what you were doing? And how did they contribute to the look and feel of the film that made it work?
The women in the movie were amazing.
Yeah.
I had worked with each one of them before,
Oh,
and I knew everything that they were capable of. And we came into this space, and there's always like a sense of like, because I was like kind of the leader and the director and the star, and I remember saying to each one of them, like, ignore that. I want you guys to be huge. I want you all to steal my thunder, and I will steal your thunder, and we will compete for this thing called social media. And so there are these moments when all of us are together, and we like interrupt each other. We like kind of step onto each other. And the idea is we're like all these roosters, And so the idea behind that was that I was going to create a world of competitive, giant personalities that are women.
Yeah.
And that was part of, and they all brought it. I mean, and then there was a lot of improvisation involved where, I would just say, okay, everyone's read the script. Now let's throw away the script. Now let's abuse the men, or now let's grab the men, or now let's do the things that men do to us. Let's have fun with it. And here, and and the discovery is all the women had difficulty with that part of it, because including myself. And I, you know what I mean? Like when I said, okay, girls, let's grab their asses, that was not so easy. I remember myself going like, is it okay if I slightly like touch it, because we're not used to it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Your bodies do not belong to us. A male body does not belong to me. So I can't just walk in the street, see a male body, say, hey, you're looking so good, hot stuff. Let me grab you where I want to. And that is a mind fuck if I've ever had one. Yeah. Because when I, so to speak, tried to be a man, I had great difficulty with that because I don't own that guy.
Of course, on the male side of your cast, they had to be free of their cultural chains as well. In casting the roles, what were you looking for in the auditions or the selection process for these men that made them the right fit for the film?
Yeah, it's an amazing question, because I had basically 3 main questions. The first question was, and I spoke to each one of these guys on Zoom. First question was, how comfortable do you feel being in a bathing suit 24/7? I said, we're going to rehearse in a bathing suit. We're going to talk in a bathing suit. We're going to, and I mean, their first bathing suits were like bright red, shiny Chippendale type style. We had to change that because it was like uncomfortable. But second question was, how comfortable do you feel talking about your bodily and facial insecurities. This was super important. I had to ask that, I know we're none of us are perfect. Do you feel comfortable talking about, your muffin top, or maybe your muscles are not big enough? How do you feel? How do you feel about that? And the third question was, tell me about the women in your life. Just how do you feel about the women in your life? And what they said on that third question is in part determined whether I'd cast them.
Amazing.
And I ended up being quite good at, I cast men who were possibly the kindest, most sympathetic, most, just understanding immediately of the project, of the script, of everything involved. And so I was just actually amazingly pleasantly surprised.
So we're living in a political environment in which there is a backlash against the freedoms of women that had previously been fought for and progressive. What are your fears right now about this backlash? That will it get worse before it gets better, in your opinion?
Yes. I do believe that, I think I made this movie in a very prescient way.
For sure.
I think that when I was making the movie and working on the movie, a lot of people would say to me, why are you doing this? Like, we're already there, everybody's already talking about women's rights. And,
Right.
And I remember saying to people, I said, all it takes is, one backlash. So the way society has functioned over time is that every time there's progress, there's always backlash. Every time there's improvement, so women suddenly coming into power, women suddenly becoming CEOs, women suddenly making money. It's created results. And one of those results is that they leave marriages, is that they become independent, that suddenly, the men have to step it up in whatever way in order to keep the woman by their side. And I think it's very interesting, in my personal experience, when women, so this is a very important thing I want to say. While making this movie, and when everybody would say to me, oh, women have already made so much progress, what are you talking about? I always say, how many female billionaires do you know? Mm-hmm. How many female artists from the 19th century who are impressionists can you name? Mm-hmm. Who was painting together with Monet, Manet, Degas? Who was painting? I know. You know why I know? Because I researched it. I had to dig it up. I had to dig up a lady who was super famous. Her name is Vigie Lebrun. She was famous during that time, but people simply removed her from history.
Right.
And I find this to be amazing, but most vitally in today's environment, sure, you can have a woman political leader here and there, but we're still looking at a world that is essentially and basically run by men. And women in the film industry, when we are pitching an investor or a distributor or a theater owner, we're usually pitching men. We're usually asking a man, hey, I've got this awesome movie, and in it, women rule the world, and men in bathing suits. Do you want it? And the guy's like, huh. And I'm always like, it's a comedy. It's literally, I just described to you my dance, and do I think that we're facing an apocalypse? Yes, because our rights are being rolled back. I'm extremely concerned. I don't think we had enough rights before. But now, I don't even know which part of it to start talking about. So yeah, I think that we need to talk about it, write about it, make art about it, and also get people to laugh about it. Let's laugh about what's going on. It's the greatest way for all of us to communicate with one another. Even if you don't agree with me politically, just take a look at this, how funny this is.
Your final speech in the film was reminiscent of Charlie Chaplin's speech at the end of The Great Dictator. Who do you hope to be talking to in that final speech as far as calling for a catalyst for change and progress? And
Oh, I'm speaking to all the women in the audience first and foremost, as in to say, we're in this together, and I'm just a statistic, just like all of you. And but I'm also speaking from the perspective and the guts and the courage of someone who's able to talk. I'm somebody who can give voice to the women who can't. And one of the extraordinary things that happens at the end of my film is women literally in the theater at the end of the movie, women cry and women raise their hands at the Q&A and they say, I've been there. That's happened to me. I've had that. But what's really cool is they drag their boyfriends and their husbands and their guy friends to this film. And suddenly these men are part of this conversation. And so I had one screening in New York City at the Angelica Film Center where two of the men in the audience said, I have never had a woman speak to me about rape. And this was the first time that you allowed us to talk about it. This was the first time that women have genuinely spoken to us about this issue. And they were amazed, excited. They learned things. I am getting, by bringing men and women together in a comedic environment and making that speech at the end, I'm doing something radical. I'm asking men to attend a lecture on women, right? Like, because the end of that speech is just about women. And normally that speech is reserved just for women, female audiences. And women talk to women about this all the time. Yeah. They repeat it, they share it, they talk about it. I want men to talk about it. I want men to feel it. I want men to experience it. I want men to say how they feel. I've had men say, you know, I'm a good guy. And I'm like, great, you know, then you can help us, right? Like, you're a great guy. And I get that. And I have met a lot of beautiful, kind-hearted men. What I want them to do is to join the conversation. What I want them to do is to be part of the conversation. What I want them to do is to say, this is wrong. What I want to happen on a political scale, I want laws. I want laws, you know, that are tougher on rapists. I want laws that will make a society, that will evolve our society to a place where I can walk out at night, you know, not having to hold my keys in my hand and not fearing any guy attacking me from the bushes. That's the society I want, and I want that to be across the world.
Finally, we've had two opportunities in the U.S. to elect women as president, and both times we rejected it for the embodiment of the piggish side of the white male patriarchy. Why can't we have nice things in this country, like octoventriloquists?
So I'm going to try to be as diplomatic in my response as humanly possible. Obviously, you know, I believe in female leadership, and obviously I believe that female leadership is the future. And it's not because I think because of some affirmative action project, we need to elect women because we haven't had women. It's because I, as a woman, have been an amazing leader. And because I have seen and met amazing female leaders who incorporate empathy, nurturing, multitasking into their style of leadership, where leadership can be kind and loving, and it doesn't have to look like this aggressive sort of male platform that we've had, which is why I'm trying to reinvent pretty much everything. You know, I have this streaming platform where I have this futuristic world of galactic queens. And the whole idea behind it is that each queen introduces a new style of leadership that is not based on the male model of leadership. And, you know, one of the things that's happened in the equalization conversation is, oh, you know, she needs to be, the woman is, because we're used to it. And I don't judge, I understand. I understand the fact that for centuries we've been programmed to think in terms of the male model of leadership: strength, power, wealth, hierarchy, little pegs. You know, you're a little guy, I'm a big guy, I get to crush you. in the female leadership project, it's a community, and you listen to the guy who's holding your boombox in the same way that you're going to listen to your DP, right? Because it's a community, and everyone can have a very interesting contribution to the ultimate goal. And the ultimate goal is not power, it's evolution. The ultimate goal is not self-aggrandizement, it's community. And if you want a leader who's going to bring your life into a better state of existence, if you want a leader who's really going to care for you, you're going to elect a woman, because a woman, first and foremost, is a mother, even if she's not actually a mother, but by nature, DNA treats her that way. Female leaders will take care of the men just as much as they'll take care of the women, because mothers are mothers to everyone. And this concept of the mother is the most ideal version of a leader that I can possibly think of.
This is Patrick McDonald for HollywoodChicago.com. Copyright 2025.